This video is brought to you by Cyberfighter, available on Amazon and Audible. Hey everybody, welcome to our first episode of VFX Tutorials. I'm William Joseph Hill, and I'm going to share with you how you can build your own virtual 3D set using the free program DAZ Studio. Let's dive into it and grab ourselves DAZ 3D and let's get to it. Okay, so I've opened up DAZ Studio, and you can download this from daz3d.com and just follow the prompts, install it. But once you have the program installed, there's different tabs. You have actors, wardrobe and props, pose and animate, lights and cameras, and the render tab. So right now, my whole purpose is to show you how to create your own 3D set and texture it. We're going to stick with this tab here, the actors, wardrobe, and props. So with your library, once you've installed it, you have all of these things in here, but you basically want to go down to, where is it? The shader presets. And I want to select the IRAY that comes with DAZ 3D because IRAY looks the most photorealistic, and DAZ Uber. So this is where we're going to have all of our shaders, all of our textures. Meantime, what we need to do is we need to build the geometry that we're going to paste textures on and model it, light it so that it looks awesome. So basically you come here, this menu here has your different tools. This is to create a new primitive, environment, but this is what we want. Create a new primitive. So we want to do a plane. So with the plane, that's just a flat plane, and it's going to paste itself like right here on the floor. I like to make it feet, scale it to feet. Let's do like 100, because that way it's going to fill up pretty much most of the frame right here. So there you go. There is a plane right there. That's your plane. And now we're also going to have another plane for a wall. So just to demonstrate this to you, I'm going to basically create a 1970s wood panel with a shag carpet texture, and I'm going to light it and show you, hey, this looks pretty photorealistic. So this is really cool, right? You're already building with the geometry. Now what we're going to do is we're going to work on how to put textures to it. Now, the one thing to remember is make sure you have texture files. Photos. You can get these off the internet. Just Google what kind of texture you're looking for. In my example, I'm using wood paneling like they had in the 1970s in the shag carpet. So just hop onto Google image search and search for these images. Try to get a big image so that when you put it onto your geometry, you'll scale it, as you can see in the tutorial. So now you need another plane. And I'm going to match that one. Boom. Okay, so now it doesn't look like that there's another plane, but you'll see in here there's two planes. So this one needs to be the wall. You basically need to rotate that 90 degrees. Bingo, now it's a wall. Now if you zoom out of your perspective view, right, using the mouse wheel, you can zoom in and out, use this to navigate. There you go, there's your wall on top of the floor. Push that back, push that back, push that back. Boom. Okay, right here. So notice the aspect ratio 16.9, which is a good widescreen. And this is a perspective view. It's not really a camera view because I haven't set up a camera. When you're modeling, it's best to stick in the perspective view. And once you've modeled everything and you've got it all set up, that's when you set up your cameras and lights. With this, though, you're not really going to use lights. You're going to use an HDRI, but I'll tell you that a little later. Meantime, we need to texture these. So let's go. Now, you could use shaders. Shaders give you different textures, but I'm going to texture stuff here instead of using shaders. And so right now I'm on the plane 2, which is my wall. I need to apply texture. So in here, you'll have different tabs, and you can also add the tab. If it's missing a tab that you need, you can select it from here, and it's going to add it to your palette right here. But it's the color. You want to go to the surface's color. So you're really going to need to select the base color. Now when you go to the base color, you can change the color here, either using that or since I have a texture file, I want to go towards my texture files. You want to create a folder where you get your textures off of the internet, or however you create your textures or get your textures or buy your textures, however you get your textures, they're going to be in a folder. And basically this is going to allow you to browse to map to it. And it's going to open up a window which you can't see right now, but I have my textures in a folder on my desktop called DAZ Tutorial Assets. And I have two JPEG files. One is a wood panel and another is a shag carpet. So right now I'm going to select the wood panel and I'm going to open that and it's going to pop right there. So now you see the wood panel, and depending on the scale, that looks a little gigantic. So what I need to do now is I need to increase the vertical tiles down here. You see the vertical tiles? And this allows you, well, not the vertical, I'm sorry, horizontal. You want to do horizontal. That's going to shrink that. And maybe vertical too, because that's going to compress it a little bit, but you don't want this seam to show up, so you want to keep it out of frame. But you want to have enough horizontal tiles to where it looks, depending on, like I said, the scale of your scene. This looks more normal, okay? So we've got that. Now, just to show you a sample of what this is going to look like, once it's lit, you can go down here and it shows you a preview of the window. You want to select the NVIDIA IRAY. This is going to show the shading, the way it's going to look. And see how the wall looks pretty good. It looks realistic. It looks almost like daylight. But your plane, your floor, it's just a solid white mass. It's just a solid white plane. As you move this around and it updates, you can see, oh, yeah, this thing needs a texture too. We need a shag carpet right here. And let's level off the camera a bit. Okay. Now to save on, I always go back to texture shading because it, as you can see, depending on your processor speed, it takes time to, and the computer might even lock up when you're in the middle of that. And so just go to texture shading, work in your texture shading, and you're fine. So now we go back to plane. That's the original plane. Same process. You go in and you get your base color. You browse to it. I have my shag carpet here. And boom, you see it. Now you notice the shag carpet isn't really showing up as much because of the ambient color or the emission color of this is kind of dark. But when you go in and you sample the IRAY, you'll notice, oh, okay. But see how the carpet is gigantic as well. That's because the texture map is a close-up. It's a close-up of this carpet right here. So again, same thing right there. You need to vertical and horizontal tiles. So what I'd like to do is I like to put in a number. I like to start with 10 and then do 10 so it's like a square. And make that a 10. So 10 by 10. 10 by 10, I got my 10 by 10 right here. Let's take a preview here. So, oh, there you go. Now that looks more like a real carpet. And as you can see, the lighting looks pretty rad. It's like, oh yeah, this is very 1970s look. And if you had furniture pieces and things, of virtual furniture pieces, you can import into that. But basically, that's how you create textures using simple geometry for your scene. Okay, now let's say we want to change the lighting on this. Well, let's go over, let me turn this one off. Save on my RAM. Go over to the render tab. Okay, so we're in the render tab now. This is where you have your render settings. This is very important. This is where you start to act like a DP right now. So again, you can add cameras and things like that, but let's get the lighting. Let's get the lighting first. Okay, so general, that's going to give you what kind of aspect ratio do you want? Do you want the active viewport, which is different? Notice how that 16.9 went away. If you're doing for a film, you have widescreen 16.9. That's not necessarily going to be full HD. If you're shooting something in 1080p, you want to make sure that instead of selecting 16.9, because it's going to go with the dimensions that you're at right now. If I did that, that's not going to render out at, see, notice here's the pixel size. See, it doesn't match. So if you were to try to put this in your editing program, it's not going to match your HD. So HD, you want to get full HD. That is going to be 1920 by 1080. That's your standard 1080p. If you're doing something for YouTube, This is a great, you don't really need 4K for YouTube, because unless you have a 4K monitor, you're not going to see the difference. Full HD looks just as good. However, if you are doing something 4K, and with Cyberfighter, with my animated sequences in Cyberfighter, I rendered out in 4K. I did render out in 4K. They have way, where did it go? It's down, Ultra, okay, Ultra HD. That is the 3540 by 2180. That's like your standard 4K. That's not even like the full 4K, but that's 4K enough to where if you're delivering online, unless you're delivering for something professional like Netflix and that's going to require a specific size, and you can actually customize that too, just to let you know. But these are presets which are very convenient. At any rate, just for now, it's just going to do 1080p. Why? Well, it's easy. It's easy, and it renders out faster. Okay. You're going to want to render out the current frame, and you're going to pop it in the window, and there's a render library which is set up. When you install DAZ 3D, it has a render library where all your rendered images go. At any rate, we're not quite done yet. We want to go down to, next step, I like to go to my environment. Now the environment gives you different options. You can do dome and scene or sun sky only, which is an outdoor simulator. Let's go in here and take a look at what, right now I just changed the sun. It looks like the roof is ripped off of this house, and it's kind of outside. And you notice that there's a little bit of glossiness to here. We'll fix that once we fix the lighting. But the sun node, you can change the time of day. You can change 6 p.m. So what if we made it, 1 p.m.? It's going to be a lot brighter. See how a lot brighter and how blown out this seems to look, depending on how you want to light your scene. I tend to go back to dome and scene, which means if I put lights in the scene, it should show up. Now, right now, the environment map was this preset that comes with their HDR. It's just a standard HDR. And depending on how your green screen footage is going to be lit, that looks okay. It could be okay. It's a little flat. Sometimes I like to get a different HDR. So again, you click here, you browse. There is a site called HDRI Haven, which is a high definition resolution imaging that provides an environment map, a lighting map for your environment. I actually have saved a few that I really, really like, and for Cyberfighter, and I'm going to see where did I put these HDRIs. I have them in a different folder, so I'm going to map to them. Right now I'm finding them. I have a folder that I collect all my HDRIs, and the ones from HDRI Haven are free, which is awesome. So I want an interior. Let's do this one. It's Kaylee interior. Let's see what that looks like. So that's loading. There it is. Okay, so here's what the map looks like. This is what the image. Hold on. Oh, see, notice it changed. It changed. It kind of got a little bit of a red tinge to it. Hold on. Oh, go back to the environment. So that's kind of like, it's a little darker. There's a little bit of light coming in, but this basically, it's a 360 degrees view that you could render out what it looks like. Like, for example, take a look here. So that's the lighting, and you see it's reflecting. It's reflecting because these planes need to be fixed so that they're not reflective. But at any rate, while we're still here in this tab, let me show you something. Draw dome, put it on. That's going to put the dome in. So as you're moving it, it's like, oh, look. It's taking the image data from that HDRI, and it's basically lighting your scene. It's like putting you in the middle of that scene. As you can see, it's gigantic. But I use these HDRIs as lighting maps so that I can get good lighting effects so that my environments can look lit properly and whatnot. So when the camera's straight on, you don't see the reflection's not so bad until you start moving it. Alternatively, if you're not getting the right effect you want, you can rotate the dome, which basically takes this dome here and it, come on, load up. Well, you know what I'm talking about. And it spins it. So like if we did it 45 degrees from the origin point, it's going to change. So notice it's throwing reflections on it because now that light is probably behind you and projecting on that. And as let's try 90 degrees. What does 90 degrees do? Okay, oh, there's even more. Well, 180 from the origin point looks like that. So it's got a reflection. So basically, for this particular HDRI, 0 degrees rotation looked the best. And so if your shot was going to be like this, it looks really, really good as far as the background goes. So now it looks like you're really, really close to the floor. We want to put a camera in here now. Now that I've been modeling everything, environment, we're going to want to put a camera in. But before we do that, I like to, while we're still here, let's take a look at some other things here. Progressive rendering. This basically determines how long it's going to take to render this out. You'll notice that the maximum samples is defaultly set to 5,000. If you're doing a single image, this takes a long time to render out, but you're perfectly fine with that. But I find that quality-wise, like I said, depending on what your output is, if your output is going to be 1080p, even if it's going to be 4K, you can get away with, and I've gone down as low as 50, but I find 100 to be fine, which means it's going to sample quicker. It'll sample out quicker. And as you can see, it'll load back again, and that's, see, there it is. They look pretty much the same, but you're going to get that result quicker. Also, going back into being a DP now, we want to look at tone mapping. This is where you have your exposure, your shutter speed, your f-stop, or the ISO. I don't touch ISO. I used to touch ISO, and I found, no, it's the f-stop. Like if you were a DP, you want to have different lighting effects, you want to use your f-stop. So if you play with that, the lower the number, the brighter the scene. So if we go down to 3, it's going to be, whoa, that's way off, right? So if we go down to 15, that's really dark. So if you 10, so depending on what you want as far as light to look like, this kind of looks like a good, 10 seems to be really, really good for me. Saturation, that's a color thing. So if we went up to 5, look, that's way too much. If we went, 1 is like a standard. If we went down to 0.5, what I do is like stick with 1. You want to play with saturation, you want to play with your color grading, do that in post with the editing. You want to make this to look as natural as possible. And gamma also, that's another thing too. Gamma, like when you play with that, it changes the gamma of the video, and you really don't want that. So it was default set 2.2, which looks the most natural. Crushing blacks, that's going to, like I say, do all that in post. When your display looks pretty realistic, like this looks like I would envision my scene should look like, stick with that. Okay, so now I'm happy with this environment. Let me turn that off now to save on RAM. And now let's go over to the lights and cameras. This allows you to put a camera in. So again, you go to this, you're in the perspective view, right? You don't have any camera views. You only have front view, left view, right view, back view, and top view and bottom. This allows you to, I find perspective view to be the most useful because I can toggle around where I want to be and whatnot. So what I do, this is my technique, is if I want a camera and I want to make this to where I'm going to have somebody standing against the wall, I need to figure out where the frame is going to be, and I need to probably tilt that. And oh, see, the seam is showing up. So let's go back to the plane. Let's go back to here. Let's go back to the color. And let me tweak the vertical tile again. Let me bring that up so that, there we go, it's out of frame. You don't want to see that seam. So now back to the camera. Okay, let's check how that's looking. Previewing the IRAY. And see, it launched quite. Oh, great. Okay, cool. I still think, based on this, that if a normal human being, based on what I remember wood paneling to look like, their head would be cut off. So there's two ways to do this. You can either zoom back way out. Hold on, let me turn that off because you see it takes too long to Upload back to texture shade. You can zoom way out, way out, way out, way out, way out. Oh, but then you're getting the edges. So you get back in a little bit, boom, till it fills the frame. Check that out. Okay, better, but again, I would say tilt that down till you get the shot the way you want it. There we go. That looks, I think, if you were to have the camera in this position, you could have somebody standing back there. Okay, great. Let me a little bit head on. Good. Okay. Good, 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 good. Alternatively, what you might want to do, right, is if you were to go back into the render tab and you were to select a bigger resolution, you can always scale it to fit your background. So sometimes you want to overdo it. So maybe if you did a 4K or a quad HD, which is not quite 4K, you can do that, and then you'll scale it in your editing program. But for now, we're building the 3D sets and we're rendering it out. You're basically going to have your environment, you got your shot, and then you hit either here to render it or here to render it. And it'll pop up a window, and you may or may not see that, but it will render it out, and it takes time, and as you can see, it's rendered the image. Bingo. The longer you let it run, and see it has a progress bar there, it takes a long time to render it out. If you have 5,000 samples selected, it would take forever. It's slightly reflective, but based on the way I have this camera right now, it's like, it's not so bad. It's not so bad. And when you have the shot, if your actor's bottom legs are not showing in the shot, then the carpet wouldn't show. You would only need to have a wall. You don't need a carpet. I just put the carpet in there to show you how, like, this is how you do basically a 3D geometric set. But at any rate, I'm not going to save that. I'm just going to cancel that out. We don't need it. I was just demonstrating that to you. But let me give you an example of, no, I don't want to save that, because I want to go in here and I'm going to find out, I'm going to go to the game show set that I did for That Darn Girlfriend. So let me see, good guess. See if good guess is good guess set. Okay, there's a file in here called the good guess set, which is loading now. And it's going to open up. And this is my prefab. I built it basically the same thing. I'm using, let's go back here. Using my primitives, I used a bunch of planes and some cubes and things, and then I imported some, like the good guess thing. That's actually, I did that in Google SketchUp using their 3D text tool, and then that's an asset, which is its own object file, which is now pasted here. Notice there's a 4:3 aspect ratio, that's the aspect ratio for That Darn Girlfriend, because it's like good old TV. And let's look at this in NVIDIA IRAY and see how this comes out, because this is how I lit it using an HDRI, and I'll show you what HDRI. But see, notice it's very flat studio lighting. These walls, I actually used the shaders to texture it. So the content library, you have different textures that you can shade something. If I was to take this wall here and I wanted to make it silver, I'm gonna see if that, okay, sometimes what you do is it's a cylinder actually. You know, you use different shapes for different effects. Let's go into the color. You got to select the color. I find that this is a bug or a feature if you want to go. Let's take away that stucco. I actually found a stucco texture and then I tinted it pink in Photoshop. So let's get rid of that. Let's just shade this. So notice the shading's gone. It has a stucco texture which was here in the content, in the shaders. There's a stucco texture in here, but I'm going to change it to silver right now. So let's do silver. Silver is going to be very reflective. So now notice it's updating with the new data, and now it's going to look like silver once it loads. And see, it's like a mirror now. you can change that to different textures. What if I wanted to make it wax? What happens when you do that? Well, this will, oh look, it looks, as it resolves itself, it'll start to look like, ooh, that's kind of like really cool. It's like a goopy wax. Or gold. Gold looks cool. Gold's like a golden mirror. Yeah, look at that. So you have all these different textures. It's amazing. Oh, leather texture. It's very, you notice it's like a close-up of the leather. So again, you'd have to go into the surfaces, and you would have to, where is it down here? Once you're starting to use shaders, it takes a while before you go down to the tiles. So you change the tiles, but right now I'm not going to do that. I'm going to show you one more. Glass. This is pretty cool. So here's the glass. It's going to be transparent. You're going to be able to see through it, kind of. Well, this is, oh, it's solid. Let's do translucent. Here, thin, clear. This is like a window. So you can render out a window. And what it is it's actually showing the plane behind here. So let's do this. I'll show you what I'm talking about. It's like, oh, it's not transparent. It's like, yeah, it actually is. It's just, if you look here, you'll notice that my geometry, you'll see the cylinder is transparent, and it's basically seeing the wall that's inside of it. But this is how I build it. You know, you build it with simple primitives. You can actually open up a new file, create a new primitive. This is a bunch of cubes locked together, and then I export this as an object. So you can go here, File, Export, and you can export as an object, or you can export as something else. And that way you import it, it's one shape instead of all these different pieces, because when you are building things, you notice every part is represented, and when you have a bunch of parts in your set, it can be very extensive. In the scene tab, look at it, can get so you want to reduce the amount of that. So the more objects you have, so you see podiums, podiums 2, these are single objects. So when you want to move it and adjust it, it's one thing instead of all these things. So if I adjusted this, it's not going to be attached to anything else. It's going to move by itself. These are part of this wall, but as I built it, it's a cube. Gives you a 3D thing. If it was a plane, you wouldn't get that edge. It builds by itself. If I was to export this whole thing as its own object, it would then become a single object pasted together, and you wouldn't be able to take each pieces. So I kept it separate so that I could, you know, work with each individual piece. And when to lower that, bring it up, however you want to do it, you play around with that. But that's basically how you build a 3D set. In our next episode, I'm going to show you how I composite my live action footage shot against a green screen onto the set to make that episode Good Guess.